Hello there, this is Christy Lois from Dostoevsky in Space, and it is July 7th, and I just thought I would update you about my reading so far this month. So I've only finished one thing, but I'm excited about it. I really loved it. It's called Death Comes for the Archbishop by Willa Cather. Now, this is the portrayal of two French Catholic priests in New Mexico in like the 1850s is sort of when it starts, but it pretty much starts from the point of when the Archbishop's ministry begins in New Mexico until his death. But it also encompasses the life of his friend, Father Billon. And it almost focuses more on Father Billon. He's like the more earthy, more friendly, more outgoing of the two, despite his physical problems. Like, he has a kind of weak constitution. He gets sick really easily and stuff. But, you know, the Archbishop is constantly looking at his friend and being like encouraged in his faith to do more. You know, like, man, that guy is just always doing so well. I need to do better too. So their relationship is really an interesting part of this. The fact that we see more of Father Billon, even though it's called Death Comes for the Archbishop, that's also very interesting. It's really interesting to hear about the lives of the French Catholic priests in New Mexico. It's like full of stuff that you wouldn't necessarily think of or expect. I really thought that was very interesting. I didn't know much about the lives of the French Catholic priests in New Mexico, that's for sure. And there's a lot of stuff you don't think about, like how long it takes a letter to reach the frontier in America. How does a letter get there? By mule, by ship, walking. Like, it takes a while. It's really interesting, their isolation, the things that they miss, the people that live there, the settings, some of the natural beauty, and also some of the natural monotony, because they're partially living in deserts or traveling in deserts. And there's a lot of dangers that go along with that. But I wouldn't go into this expecting a really strong plot. It's really about the setting and the character, and I loved those things. The descriptions were really, really gorgeous. There's this New York Times quote on here that says, "It stands out from the very resistance it opposes to classification," which I think is true. You can't really classify it very easily. It's a fictional account of a priest's life in New Mexico. It's really fascinating, though. There's really some really beautiful quotes in here, so I'll just leave you with one of my favorites. It's not one of the landscape ones, which the landscapes are really, really gorgeous in here. "The miracles of the church seem to me to rest not so much upon faces or voices or healing power coming suddenly near us from afar off, but upon our perceptions being made finer, so that for a moment our eyes can see and our ears can hear what is there about us always," which I just love because I'm always praying to see what God is doing around me, and I just really love that that's what Father Latour also wants to see. This was really, really wonderful. I can't wait to read more Willa Cather. Whoop. But I get the impression that this is not her most like well-loved and well-plotted book from some people. Some perspectives were, you know, unhappy about the plot. But just the fact that death is in the title, I kind of love the death stories of people. Is that morbid of me? I love the death of Ivan Illich. I love the death of Ivan Illich. But I think death is such an important thing in people's lives. It's like a major change. It's a change we all go to. It's a change that we're afraid of, many of us. But Father Latour, he was not afraid of it. In fact, he was kind of excited about it. If you know more death stories like this one, or like the death of Ivan Illich, let me know. Not like too hard-edged and modern and nihilistic. That's why I didn't so much think I was going to be reading so much Jane Austen in July, because there's not like enough death and darkness and depression in her books. Like, there's some sadness and there's a lot of social critique, but like, death isn't something that happens, unlike in, like, you know, Elizabeth Gaskell. She has death in her works, and I appreciate that. Why I was talking partially about Jane Austen is because I actually DNF'd a book that I was going to try for Jane Austen July that I forgot to tell you guys about, and it was called The Murder of Mr. Wickham. It's supposed to be, I think, a mystery where all of these characters from Jane Austen's books show up at this manor house, and there's a murder, and it's gonna be like Clue almost. It's kind of how I'm imagining it. And that sounded fun. Honestly, just the title, and I think the cover is really, really pretty. The portrayal of Fanny and Edmund right off the bat was like, you don't get them at all. Which nobody does. Nobody modern gets Fanny and Edmund. Oh well. Oh, it's 5:20. I gotta go. I'm gonna be watching a K-drama with my friend Joanna. Tiffany normally joins us, but she's not here this week. Anyways, I'll come back when I've read more. Bye. Hey there, guys. It is now July 30th, and I really meant to update you guys earlier about my reading because I did finish a lot of things this month. A lot of them were like short things. I'm really in the mood for short things right now. I just finished French Kids Eat Everything by Karen Billon. These are in no sort of order. This is an audiobook that I've listened to before, and it's about French, the way the French eat, just like on a daily basis. It's not about like the famous French food culture that, you know, like French chefs are famous for, that's like really heavy and fancy. It's more like what kind of ordinary fare French people eat for like and prepare for their families and stuff. The way that they approach food, it's just like so much healthier than American. There was like a study that was quoted in it where it showed a picture of a chocolate cake and it asked Americans and French people what word that they would associate with the chocolate cake. And Americans said guilt and French said celebration. You know, so they enjoy food a lot. They're foodies, but there's also like extremely low rates of obesity, especially childhood populations in comparison to like American children. Like the differences are startling. It talks about how French raise their kids to appreciate a wide range of food and cultivate their palate, and just like some of the food rules that they have, that they don't really think about it as rules. It's just like they understand the consequences of eating certain ways, and it's like just habitual for them to eat in a way that is both pleasurable and healthy, because food is not pleasurable if you don't have a good, healthy relationship with it. You can't necessarily enjoy desserts if you're eating too much of them all the time, because it'll make you feel like not good. You know, you won't feel good if you're having too much sugar and, you know, stuff like that. So they just have some really like common sense guidance for how to eat and how to prepare food for your family. And it is called French Kids Eat Everything, so there's a lot of advice for parents and stuff, but I just find it like really refreshing, and it helps me kind of retool my brain, my mindset about food. I just have like such a fraught relationship with food sometimes because of my autoimmune disorders, and also I really love eating, but I've always like loved dessert a little too much, you know. I definitely feel better if I don't have as much sugar. I always am trying to get that like a healthy mindset about that. And this book really just helps me appreciate vegetables, try new things. Like one of the rules that it talks about, which I've actually found to be mostly true, is if you don't like a food, it's probably because you haven't tried it that many times or enough times yet. I didn't really grow up eating cucumbers, and I didn't really like them, and I still don't like that family, like the squash, summer squash and stuff like that. But I was encouraged, you know, to keep trying to eat cucumbers because it was one of the foods that I could eat recently when I had a recent bout of autoimmune problems, and I just needed to find more foods that I could eat and enjoy, and cucumbers was one of those foods. And I remembered the rule that the more you try something, the more you will get used to it, the more you'll start to like it. That hasn't worked for every kind of food for me. Like I still have trouble eating lamb. I like lamb like right off the bone, but like every other kind of lamb that I try, I just have a terrible time with it, like ground lamb. But because I heard this rule, I tried lamb right off the bone, and I actually like it. Also, I appreciate that this book just helps me eat a more varied diet, and really varied is one of the major keys of French eating and eating healthy, is eat a varied diet so you don't get bored. So really just common sense stuff. I really highly recommend this book. It was one of my favorite books the year that I first read it. I don't remember what year that was. It may have been last year. Highly recommended. So good. And I also recently finished Dr. Faustus by Christopher Marlowe. This is a play by an English playwright, and I read this in preparation for Faustathon. It's very short, it's very punchy, very dramatic. I really loved it. It was quite funny. It's a tragedy in 5 acts about the doctor turned necromancer / astrologer who makes a deal with the devil so that he can pretty much have 24 years of wish fulfillment. He has all these knowledgeable requests that he wants to make. Like he wants to learn more about the stars, and he also wants to like taste all of life's pleasures that he hasn't so far tasted as a very respectable doctor, which he was before making this deal with the devil. I just really enjoyed this. The scope of Faust's requests, the things that he asks the demon Mephistopheles for, are startling for being written in like 1540s. I think he died in like 1540 or something. So it was written slightly before that. It was first published in 1604. And Christopher Marlowe was also kind of similar to Faust in a lot of ways, not in the deal with the devil type, but I was reading a biography and it seems like he was an atheist. He did a lot of criminal activity. He was also a very popular playwright and may have been murdered actually for his beliefs. So it's quite a thing. It's interesting. Really enjoyed this. If you want to learn more about Faustathon, I created a playlist and it's linked in the description below. And I hope that you'll join us for Faustathon because we're gonna have such a good time next month. I have several more versions of Faust on my TBR, so we'll get to that. Oh, and I wanted to read a quote as well. Had I as many souls as there be stars, I'd give them all for Mephistopheles. Faust really commits some pretty scary blasphemies in this book. Like, I thought everything was so well drawn. Like, some of it was really subtle and some of it was just like blowing your senses type descriptions. So I really enjoyed it. I didn't expect to be that drawn in. And there was some coarse humor. It reminded me of Shakespeare very much. And I also finished the collection Bad Business Essential Stories by Fyodor Dostoevsky this month, which was for a read along. Some of the other stories in here were just so funny. There was so much humor in here. It seems like this was just such a success for people who had never really tried Dostoevsky, who hadn't really read Russian literature before. This was a success. I would say this is probably a good starting place actually for Dostoevsky. I really recommend his short stories now. I hadn't read very many of them before. I'd only read one of them that was in here. Two of the short stories, like the very last two, I'm not really sure why they were included. Maybe just to show that Dostoevsky has a bit more scope than really caustic humor, dry wit, all that stuff. But I think that you will enjoy it regardless of the last two stories. They're very short. Recommended. It was such a pleasure to hear everybody else enjoying it as well in the live show that we did on Evie's channel, which I'll have linked down below. I was very pleased that everybody enjoyed this. And that group that I read this with, which includes Stephanie and Tiffany, Kate from the Literary Apothecary, and Evie from She Was Only Evie, whose channel we talked about this on. We're also reading Persuasion next month, so that will be on my TBR. I should have actually already started it, and I've only read like one chapter, so that's on my TBR. Anyways, the next thing that I finished, not really the next, but one of the things that I finished was The Pursuit of Love by Nancy Mitford, which I've talked about quite a bit, I feel like, but I did finish it. It's technically fiction, but the characters are very much based on the family of the author. So it's narrated by Nancy as a girl, and it's talking about her cousin. They grew up together in pursuit of love, and the cousin's pursuit of love is wild with lots of ups and downs. It's really very funny, very entertaining. One of the really funny things about it is, I mean, it's like everything about it was really enjoyable to me, but the portrayal of the politics of the period was really so unique and interesting to me because her cousin marries a communist and she says just these funny things like, the comrades are sweet, but they never chat. They make speeches all the time. I'm always saying to Christian how much I wish his buddies would either brighten up their parties a bit or else stop giving them, because I don't see the point of sad parties, do you? And left-wing people are always sad because they mind dreadfully about their causes, and the causes are always going so badly. She's very fond of the left-wing and actually has a lot of problems with the other side in England, but she just her very candid, she's like, I know I'm being disloyal, but like they're sad and boring all the time. It's just really funny. It's not like a political book at all, so don't worry about that. But she was also not a very serious person. And that's part of the story, is the character of this woman whose life we are watching. It's mostly sad because she doesn't have a good foundation in certain skills. And one of them is, you know, thinking and settling down to your responsibilities and stuff like that. Really great stuff. There's other great quotes in there too, like, the great advantage of living in a large family is that early lesson of life's essential unfairness. Anyways, I also read this volume of Fruits Basket. This is volume 5 of like the collector's edition, the newer one, and I didn't realize that the collector's edition is different than the regular ones in like the amount of material they contain. So I think I accidentally skipped a few volumes when I picked this one up, because I read the volume 4 of like the regular one last. So I'm going to go back and try and figure out where I left off and read them. I just really enjoy being back in this world. I always just find Toru Honda such a wonderful character. And in here, one of the characters, when they first met her, they were startled by Toru's warmth, even as she could read Toru's waves. One of the characters can like read people's vibes, basically. And she could feel that Toru was sad, but she was always giving off these warm and welcoming vibes to everybody around her. I really love people like that. I admire people like that, and I'm always drawn to people like that as well. So I think that's partly why I love this series. It's so nice to see how Toru handles the ups and downs of this kind of like day in the life drama. And I think that probably this is going to be a big manga month as well for me, as well as maybe also a picture book month this next month coming up, because I've been really interested in like the visual arts lately. I think partly because a lot of the Korean things that I've been enjoying are very visual, the K-pop and the K-drama and all of that. So I also picked up Bun Heads, which is by the author Misty Copeland, of a autobiography / memoir that Misty Copeland wrote with the help of another writer. And I picked this up because I read that and I loved that, and I'll talk about that in a second. But I just thought the illustrations in here were so gorgeous. I really enjoyed looking at these. So I have another couple manga on deck that people recommended to me, and I'm really looking forward to reading those, and another picture book as well on deck. Yeah, I got a bunch of great recommendations recently. And then, and so the biography that I was talking about by Misty Copeland is called Life in Motion. Misty is a black ballerina, and she's also an unusual ballerina in many ways. She came to this art form like very late for ballerinas to go professional. Like I think she was 13, like a young teenager, when she was discovered. She was sent to a boys and girls club to try out a class, and she was even too shy to begin in the beginning, but they got her going and gave her the equipment that she needed because they recognized that she was a dance prodigy. She just had this ability to watch people's movement and imitate it very easily, and her body was just so strong and springy in the right way for her to pull off all of these incredible dance moves. And so it was really a pleasure listening to this autobiography and about her upbringing, which was kind of difficult. She lived with her mom and several siblings, and at the time that she was discovered, she was actually living with them in a hotel room. But her mom, she speaks of very lovingly. They have a good relationship, but growing up it was difficult because her mom was constantly moving in with boyfriends and bringing the kids with her and stuff like that. So not an easy upbringing, and it's pretty incredible that she turned out to be such an amazing success. And I had a great conversation with Alana Estelle, who is also a ballerina, and she recommended this book so highly. Like, she doesn't normally rate things emotionally, but she's just loved this book so much. She rated it 5 stars and just gave a glowing video review of it. So I had a conversation with her, which should be up on the channel sometime this month. And I'm just so glad that she recommended this, as well as The Pursuit of Love by Nancy Mitford. She also recommended that to me. And I also read Kitchen by Badano Yoshimoto, which is translated from Japanese, and I read this with Una from the Codex Cantina because he and Cristo have been talking about Yoshimoto's short fiction for quite a long time, and I've been very curious about her. And then I saw that Namjoon from BTS had read it, and I was like, okay, well, I'm reading his bookshelf right now, so I had to read it. Yeah, I'm really glad that I did. I distinctly feel like I didn't get it, so I need to discuss more with Una about it because I'm sure he got more of the symbolism, but it was just so simple and pleasurable to just read. You know, I did enjoy it even though I don't feel like I necessarily got it. And I did feel like some of the conversations were a bit stilted, and I didn't really understand why or what vibe I was missing on. So but other than that, the writing was very smooth and just like delicious, like food. It was fun to read this as a foodie because clearly either the author or the character herself, just the character, is a foodie, because there was a lot of discussion about food and people coming together over food. I did enjoy that. So technically there were 2 stories in this collection, but I just read the one, Kitchen, and it was about a girl whose grandmother had just died, and so she moves in with a boy who knew her grandmother from her grandmother's favorite flower shop. And so he and his trans mom take in the girl character of this book, and they kind of form a little family for like 6 months. It helps her move through her grief. It's a book about grief, really. So that community changes her and it changes them in a really strong way. So, and keeping in mind that I don't know exactly when this was published, but it definitely wasn't in the 2000s. So the portrayal of like the trans woman is probably not up to today's modern standards, so just keep that in mind if you're picking it up. But yeah, I enjoyed this one, and I'll definitely read some of her short fiction at some point because I'm sure I will be able to pick up the symbolism better in a short story because I can reread it so easily and quickly. And I think I already talked to you guys about Death Comes for the Archbishop and Girl with Seven Names. I'm pretty sure I already did, so I won't talk about that anymore. So the rest of my TBR, I am anticipating, like I said, kind of a manga month. And I have some fantasy as well sort of lined up. Like, I've been reading the Stardust Thief. I finally moved to the point to where I can listen to it because I'm like 20-something% in physically. And so I feel like I've got a good handle on the world and the plot is starting to get moving. So we'll see what happens with that. I've started reading The Apothecary Diaries by Natsu Hyuga. I'm loving that. It's like a Japanese historical mystery, and it reminds me kind of Junher a little bit, but with illustrations. I think if I'm going to get into mysteries, like historical mystery is going to be the thing. Emma, like I mentioned, lots of Faust retellings, like I mentioned. I'll probably read Goethe's Faust, Devil to Pay by Dorothy L. Sayers. Goethe's Faust, I think, is closer to how you say it. But anyways, I'll be listening to that one, I think, because I tried physically reading it and I couldn't find a good ebook for both parts, and it was just like such a pain. So I'm just going to probably listen to it, but we'll see. And Unmarriageable by Sonia Kamal. The Count of Monte Cristo. I totally failed on finishing the Count of Monte Cristo section for today. There was a live show today, and I just was like, I'm so sorry, but I did not finish it. I'm not enjoying it, guys. But I do want to finish it for the finale live show. Normally, I have no problem DNFing anymore. That's not true. I find it very difficult to DNF, to be honest with you, but I didn't want to DNF this one because I'm enjoying the conversations with Naomi and Janelle. So they are making it worth reading for me, even though I'm not really enjoying it. But I think I'll be able to finish it now because I don't have to stop. Once I get on a roll with it in the next 2 weeks, I'll just keep on listening and I'll keep on listening and I'll finish it eventually. And Penny has assured me that the last, I don't know how much she said, but the last bit is pretty good and it'll be worth it. So yeah, we'll see. What else? Yeah, I have a lot of books out from the library. So that's probably all I'll mention. I'll probably read The Devil and Tom Walker for Faustathon. I might try to read something theological. I've been trying for I feel like a couple months to read something theological. I mean, I'm doing Faustathon, which is there's some theology in Dorothy L. Sayers' play, but I would really like to read some theological nonfiction. I really need to do another Lent season just for myself. Maybe I should do that next month. In fact, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do another Lent season. I'm writing this down right now before I forget. Okay, that's it. So for Lent, what I do is I try to stay off all of my devices as far as looking at Instagram or watching YouTube videos until noon. And I try to actually read in the morning so that I have a good mindset of focus for the rest of the day and into the evening when I read again in the evening. And I can work in the mornings if I have finished some Bible study already and stuff like that. And it just gives me a rest. It's such a good breather to take a break and make sure I am enforcing that break time, because it's really easy for me to just get into working early in the day. And I think I need to do this again. So I'm going to do that. We'll see what I try to read. I did try to read The Great Divorce. I was really intrigued by people's recommendations of that by C.S. Lewis, but I had some trouble getting into it, which isn't usual for me with C.S. Lewis. So I just figured it was probably not the right time for me. Maybe I'll try that again. Maybe I'll try, the Demon Letters. I forget what it's called, but I'll put it here. I'm really looking forward to this month now that I know I'll have more reading time. I actually have been focusing better because I started a new medicine and it's helping me to focus. But I've just been choosing to do other things. In fact, I've been choosing to do a lot of Korean. Usually when I'm relaxing, I'm doing Korean now because it's so interactive. It's really easy for me to focus on learning Korean. And I'm making so much progress and it's so fun that I'm just always doing Korean. But I need to make sure that I'm also feeding my spirit and reading some books, educating the brain beyond just language learning. I am also planning to read The Family Grandstand by Carol Ryrie Brink, which I think is for Kate Howe's Kindred Spirits book club. I believe there's also a Victorian book club meeting this month for Kate Howe's Patreon, and I've missed a couple of them as far as actually reading the books, so I want to make sure that I do this one. But I don't remember what the book is, so I need to go check and see if I can find it. There's also a lot of other things that I'm halfway through that maybe I'll finish, maybe I won't. I'll talk about them later next month. Also, Tiffany's book bingo is giving me so much motivation. Not gonna lie, that's part of why I want to finish The Count of Monte Cristo, but mostly it's because I just enjoy the discussions with Janelle and Naomi, and I'm so grateful that they're doing this read-along, because it's just fun to have an in-depth classics read-along sometimes, you know? So anyways, that's my plans, that's what I read, etc. Let me know what you guys read this month and really enjoyed. What would you recommend that you read this month? And let me know what you're reading next month, and especially if you're doing Faust along. I'm excited to chat more with you guys. Okay, take care. I'll talk to you next time.